So good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Lewis Tait, pastor of the Village Church. I hope that you've had a good day today and that you've experienced some of the wonderful beauty that made this day great. So good, Elder Jackie, good to see you. And everybody, if you get a chance, will you just invite some people to join us? And listen, I'm going to take the opportunity to do the same. So while you are jumping on, like I said, I hope that you've had a good evening. Take the opportunity to go, if you're on Facebook, to invite some people to join you. Just go down to the bottom. Sherwin, my good friend, how are you, man? Certainly miss you, man, so much. I got to get you to do some music for me. So look, it's on you, man. Give me a call after this, around about 8:15. I certainly like to get you to do some music for me, record it and send it. Anyway, it's so good to have you here. So as you're jumping on, would you really invite some people? Bible study is in about 30 minutes, so we don't want people to miss it. And so I want you to just take the opportunity to invite some people to join and go down to the bottom of your page where it says share. You can send in Messenger, and you can share with a bunch of folks. You just push on send, and it goes to them, and then they can choose to watch it or not. But you send it, and you never know who's going to tune in. So while I'm doing that, you do the same. All right? And as we're doing that together, I'll give you a few announcements, and we're going to start another 2 or 3 minutes. We're going to get started. Is on December 16th and 17th, we'll be giving away toys for tots again. And so those of you who may want to volunteer, please send us an email through the church's website, which is thevillagedc.church. There it is right there. And let us know that you're interested in being a part of that, because we definitely going to need your help. Good to see you, Patience, my wonderful sister. So as you're jumping on, just, send people an invite and let them know that we are on tonight, and then they can check us out if they so desire. So I'm doing that, and hope you're doing it with me. And then we'll get started. Don't forget, every Sunday we air our service on social media. Good to see you, Deacon Charlie, as always. And so we start at 9 sharp. You can get up, get a cup of coffee, get things going, and join us. Luria, good to see you. It's so good to see you, Luria. All right. So take an opportunity to invite some people. Let them know that we are on. And this is our Bible study for the fall. Or winter, as some people will call this time of the year. So we're going to pray. We're going to get started. God, thank you for a wonderful day. Thank you for everyone who's joining us tonight for our study together. I pray that they've had a good day. I pray, God, that you would strengthen those who are sort of weak and lift up those who sort of have difficulties, whether being sort of a little depressed or down. Give their spirits an uplift, allow them to realize that you have never, ever left any of us. We pray for our study tonight in your son's name. Amen. All right. So this is our third session. Of course, I'm calling this Bible study CTR, Critical Race Theology. And the title of it is really what's really going on. That's just asking a question. And you probably can think of so many different things when you think about that question, what's really going on. So as I was preparing tonight, I started to think about, in particular, I was thinking about Marvin Gaye who wrote a song in 1971, some 50 years ago, that is still relevant today. In 1971, there were people who were protesting police brutality. It seemed like we're still doing the same thing. Many Americans were angry over the Vietnam War. Of course, now a lot of folks are angry because we brought troops home from Afghanistan. We've been over there for a long time and haven't really had the kind of outcome that they thought they were going to get. And it's high unemployment in 1971, and there's still high unemployment today, particularly among African American people and people who are non-white. And then there's a lot of changing since COVID. There are people actually not necessarily unemployed because they can't find a job. Some of them are unemployed because they just don't want to do the same kind of work they've been doing. So the song was entitled "What's Going On," and pretty much all of you have probably heard of this song. And it has become sort of an anthem, if you will. And it's Marvin Gaye was brilliant. He was about 50 years ago. And he says part of the lyrics is like, "Mother, mother, there's too much of you crying. Brother, brother, there's far too many of you dying. You know, we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. Yeah, Father, Father, you don't need to escalate. You see, war is not the answer, for only love can conquer hate. You know, we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. There's picket lines and picket signs. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see, oh, what's going on? What's going on? Oh, what's going on?" It's a powerful song. Maybe you'll go back and listen to it tonight. And that was 1971. Powerful, powerful song. Then here recently, there's T. Grizzly's song, "Mr. Officer," which was penned lyrics in 2020, which featured Queen Najee and members of the Detroit Youth Choir. And here are just a few lyrics, because there are a lot of lyrics to some of these songs. You can look them up and read them. They can be helpful. It says, "Mr. Officer, Mr. Officer, y'all are killing us. Mr. Officer, what if that was my brother? What if that was my brother? What if that was my dad? What if that was my dad? What if that was my uncle? What if that was my uncle? What if they were all I had? That was all I had. Mr. Officer, y'all are killing us, Mr. Officer. What if that was my brother? What if that was my dad? What if that was my uncle? What if that was all I had? Y'all supposed to be the heroes, though. You know, protect and serve, not taking us off the planet. I see the police." And then there's an expletive, and it plucks with my nerves. They pulling me over and I'm showing both my hands, and I'm watching my words. I got insurance, no warrants. He pointing his gun like he want to blow it. That's what's happening, sort of describes sort of what people were feeling, and some people were feeling in 2020 and in that particular song. And then one of my favorite artists, she uses initials or an acronym, HENR. And she wrote this song in 2022. It gave a view, a perspective that many folks still refuse to see. Her song was entitled "I Can't Breathe." It's powerful, and it's really, all of these songs to me are like critical race theory, critical race theology in music. Here are a few lyrics. He says, "No, starting a war, screaming peace at the same time. All the corruption, injustice, the same crimes. Always a problem if we do or don't fight. And we die. We don't have the same right. What is a gun to a man that surrenders? What's it going to take for someone to defend her? If we all agree that we are equal as people, then why can't we see what is evil? I can't breathe. You're taking my life from me. I can't breathe. Will anyone fight for me? How do we cope with when we don't love each other? Where is the hope and the empathy? How do we judge off the color? The structure was made to make us the enemy. Now, these next few lyrics, because there's a ton of lyrics in the song. I encourage you to listen to it and, read the lyrics. But these next few lyrics to me are, they're very powerful for me, but they express what many of us feel or think. But we didn't have the space to share sometimes what we think. And it says, some of our lyrics say this, it says, trying times are all the time. You know how we feel like, God, especially when you're Black, like every day you walk out, it's like, man, do we have to go through this again? Trying times are all the time. Destruction of minds and bodies and human rights, stripped of bloodlines, whipped and confined. This is the American pride. It's justifying a genocide, romanticizing the theft and bloodshed that made America the land of the free. To take a Black life, land of the free. To bring a gun to a peaceful fight for civil rights. You are desensitized to pulling triggers on innocent lives because that's how we got here in the first place. So what's going on? I want y'all to think about that. These three songs, and there are probably many more. Just think about even just the lyrics. They preach to me. They speak to me. And as I was looking at those lyrics, I came across a story earlier this week that just kind of blew my mind. But I'm not surprised. But, when you see this stuff, you're like, it does make you shake your head. And there was a story, and the title of it, it was a true story. Black children were jailed for a crime that doesn't exist. Almost nothing happened to the adults in charge. This article was written in ProPublica, and if you're interested, I can send it to you. ProPublica, you can get it. And it's like, what is really, really going on? Black children were jailed for a crime that doesn't exist. Think about that. Almost nothing happened to the adults in charge. Judge Donna Scott Davenport oversees a juvenile justice system in Rutherford County, Tennessee, with a staggering history of jailing children. She said kids must face consequences, which rarely seem to apply to her or the other adults in charge. This is the problem I have. I grew up, my father, people call him a disciplinarian, but he wasn't abusive or wasn't just doing stuff for us because he just needed to make sure we learned a lesson, just being absolutely mean. There were times that my father apologized, at least to me, and I think apologized to my other siblings. And this was the saying, these adults are doing things that are unjust, that are wrong, that are just downright mean. And you are doing stuff to children, and to say that kids must face their consequences. I'm not against kids having to deal with the consequences of their behavior, but why does it have to be jail? And then why aren't you being dealt with for your part in doing so? Good evening, Miss Perry, Miss Brenda. Good to see you. So this was interesting because this happened. It's sad, but it's just unbelievable that something like this is just coming out, but it's probably been going on because this was talked about April 15th, 2016, but this is going on. So there were 3 police officers who crowded into the assistant principal's office at Hoggood Elementary School, and Tammy Garrett was the school's principal. She had no idea what to do. One officer was wearing a tactical vest and was telling her, go get the kids. The second officer was telling her, go get the kids. The third officer wasn't saying anything. Kids now, they were being arrested basically because they appeared on a YouTube. It showed that two boys were 5 and 6 years old and throwing feeble punches at a larger boy as he walked by while the others tagged along. And basically the kids who were scuffling didn't get arrested. It was the kids who were just standing there watching. And it just baffles me. There were 11 children in all who were over this video, including an 8-year-old, taken by mistake. And the insanity of this is parents and the community leaders, they were upset and condemned the actions of the police, unimaginable, they said, unfathomable, as a Nashville pastor said, unconscionable. Um, and it went inexhaustible and insane. 3 legislators said, but Rutherford County's juvenile court judge focused instead on the state of youth, telling a local TV station, "We are in crisis with our children in Rutherford. I've never seen it this bad." And Rutherford County established the position of an elected juvenile court judge in the year 2000. Ever since, Donna Scott Davenport has been the job's only holder. She sometimes calls herself the mother of the county. See, this story is disturbing because there are children being arrested, and primarily these children are Black children. And if you think that is a way to deal with children, I just beg to differ. I mean, good to see you, Elder and Tait. Glad that you are here tonight. Bless you. So the thing is this is something that really should wake us all up, because across this country, in the so-called civilized world, there's no country, I think, in the face of the planet who are arresting children right now like America is doing. And of course, there are other countries that have other issues, don't get me wrong. But we are supposed to be the sort of the shining light for the world. And so how in the world could be arresting children? uh, and This judge also, she encourages parents troubled by their children's behavior to use over-the-counter kits to test them for drugs. Don't buy them at the dollar store, she says on the radio. The best ones are the reputable drugstore. So here is a woman, her whole idea. Pastor Danny, so good to see you, man. Here is a woman as a judge who is presiding over these children. I mean, children have been 7 years old and locked up, 13. Just incredible. 8-year-olds and 9 years old, very common. And we're not talking about kids who've done some heinous crime. It is serious miscarriage of justice. One of Davenport's, one of her favorite sayings, or some of her, is "God don't make no jump." She says to kids to instill self-worth, to instill fear. She will say, I'm going to let you be dumb, young and dumb one time. And there's no jury in this juvenile court. So Davenport decides the facts as well as the law. And that is why she says she should get better pay. Now, there's something incredibly wrong with this situation. And I asked myself, what in the world is going on in America? And so I realized that Judge Davenport, she's certainly not following Jesus' teaching. Of course, this woman, she says she's a Christian and she believes in God. You see the difference? You see, when people say they are Christians and when they believe in God, but then they seem to have this very judgmental side, this very harsh side, and it's very harsh. Not when it comes to them, though, or some of the people that they support, but when it comes to others, they're very keen on punishing them as a way of sort of helping them, I guess, come down the right path. And you're right, and Patience, you're absolutely right. Then you scar these children. This is trauma. And if you ever, I don't know if some of y'all listening tonight, maybe you could think back in your childhood and write it maybe briefly on a line on your Facebook. Maybe you've been through something and you've been traumatized, and maybe you thinking about it even now. Something happened to you when you were a child that you still live with, because sometimes it's hard to get rid of that scarring that happens to you when you're a child. So one of the things I want us to go to is Matthew chapter 19 tonight. If you have your Bible, this is a Bible study. So Matthew chapter 19, verses 13 through 15. I'm reading from the New Living Translation of the Bible tonight. But so I want you to come with me to this biblical text in Matthew. And Jesus, he was traveling. He didn't have a plane ticket. He wasn't on the bus. He didn't have a car. They didn't have those at the time. But he was traveling. Most of the times, people, how they traveled back then was on foot. If they were fortunate enough to have an animal to help them, and that was something else. We also got to remember Jesus was not wealthy. And so he traveled on by foot. And that was kind of what most of the people did during that time, traveled by foot. So Jesus, he was traveling. He had just left Galilee. He was headed down to a place near Judea, sort of east of the Jordan River, if you've ever been in that area, which was probably Bethany. And there was a large crowd, of people who followed Jesus there, because, when they got people got in Jesus' presence, when people were healed and miracles were performed, or they were listening to his teachings, it's like they were almost mesmerized. And so they followed and wanted more of him and more of what he was talking about. So there was a large crowd that followed him there. And while he was there, of course, he healed those who were sick. So he was always sort of trying to meet people's needs and always trying to minister in some way and giving out to other people. So not only, though, we also remember when people who are coming, there are those who are there who needed and wanted to be healed, or they wanted to hear what Jesus had to say. But remember, there's always the other side. So as those people that were there who were sort of represent those who are inquisitive or positive or want something from Jesus that will help them, then you also have these haters who were there as well. Some of the Pharisees followed him too, and they tried to see if they could catch him in a lie. That was their whole intent. They weren't really interested in really getting an answer to their questions. Or how people ask you a question, and sometimes they really want help, and they will, whatever you're saying to them, they will take it to heart and they will use it. Where some people, they'll ask you stuff not because they really want an answer, but they really just want to either debate, or at times they want to sort of see if some kind of way they can catch you either in a lie or to or dispel whatever you're talking about. You meet people like that who just combative for combative sake. It's nothing wrong with being challenged or asking questions. I mean, that's part of life. But when it's done out of a spirit of meanness or dismantling another person, or just out of a hateful spirit dismantling. So listen, these Pharisees are there and they follow him. So they're trying to catch Jesus in the line. So they asked Jesus about divorce. If you go back to the beginning of chapter 19, they're having this conversation about divorce and marriage, right? And so Jesus is fine. He's fine. He's going to engage them. So Jesus seemed to indicate to them, after all this conversation about marriage and divorce, and some people will take chapter 19, particularly on marriage and divorce, and that becomes their manifest destiny or manifesto for all marriage, without thinking about the nuances and the gray areas. They just go from there. Good to see you, my brother Tony. Good to see you, man. Hope Bishop Spearman is doing well down there in South Carolina. Good to see you. So, what Jesus said, he talks about divorce. And of course, they never like what he's saying. And then he seems to indicate that not everybody's going to get married. And I must have blew them away. Just that one piece. If you read it, you will see it. He seems to indicate everybody's not going to get married, and God helps them, helps these people that he's talking about. He mentions some of them. He mentions that he says some are born eunuchs. Interesting. We ain't got time to unpack that tonight, but he says some are born eunuchs. This is Jesus talking. And some have been made eunuchs by others. In other words, they weren't born that way. Somebody made them a eunuch. Eunuchs normally are men who are unable to be reproductive in terms of having children because something has happened to their reproductive organ. All right, I'll leave it that way so we can keep it kind of PG. and some chose not to marry. Now, what some translations say, they made themselves eunuchs. In other words, they made. Can you imagine that, making yourself a eunuch? Woo, that's got to be pain. Now, I know it's painful, and really, they made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom, for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. That's what he said. In other words, they're not going to get married, and they're going to make sure that they don't really have any desires, because when somebody becomes a eunuch, there's something that happens to your hormones. So if you go study about eunuchs, that's why they look a little bit deformed, a little bit different. Because as a male, when you testosterone, when you sort of mess with that, it can do different things to your body and just how you function that way. So, but they really didn't want to know what Jesus taught, and of course, and he was at Bethany for a few days, and I'm pretty sure they backed up once he said that. And then one of those days, as we come into our text, as he was there, and we look at verse number 13 of chapter 19 of Matthew, if you haven't gone away yet. And it says, one day, some parents brought their children to Jesus so he could lay his hands on them and pray for them. But the disciples scolded the parents for bothering him. But Jesus said, let the children come to me. Don't stop them. For the kingdom of heaven belongs to those who are like these children. And he placed his hands on their heads and blessed them before he left. Now, this is powerful, because when we think about how children are being treated, the question I like to raise is, what's really going on, particularly with people who say this is a Christian nation, which it certainly is, in my estimation, is not, and others could be debated. And of course, it doesn't leave any room for any other persons who may have other expressions of faith when we say we are a Christian nation. And then when we say that, how in the world, if we are, which Christian means that you are a Christ follower, but I keep telling y'all that this is critical race theology. Christian doesn't always mean Christ follower. I mean, it should, but it doesn't, because there's a brand of Christianity. Sometimes we call it Western Christianity. And of course, in the United States, we know that white evangelicals, they also call themselves Christians. We know that the Ku Klux Klan, they call themselves Christians. We know that various groups who are unjust and really don't really follow what we understand to be the way of Jesus, but they call themselves. And so what's really going on when people say that they are Christians, but they're really not Christ followers? Because you're absolutely right, Pat. If you are a Christ follower, a Jesus follower, then this passage of scripture, you would have to live by, you would have to understand. He said, one day some parents, in other words, Jesus had been there at Bethany, been healing people, and these parents, nobody told them to come. Nobody pushed them. It says some parents brought their children to Jesus so he could lay his hands on them. In other words, they must have felt that Jesus, there was something about this man. When someone laid their hands on you, it was a signal, it was a sign that you were either being anointed, you were being blessed. It was a sign that something was being conferred to you. So they wanted Jesus. They didn't want a king. Think about it. They didn't want the president of the United States. They didn't want the Congress. No, they wanted Jesus. They didn't even want the preacher. They didn't want the scribes or the Pharisees. Not even the disciples. They wanted Jesus to lay his hands on them and pray for them. Wow. So now if we represent Jesus, if Jesus is in us and we say we are born again, we are saved, and all of these terms that we use, and we're in relationship with God through Jesus, then the way we should lay our hands on children is to care for them, is to make sure that they're healthy and whole. When we put our hands on children like Jesus did and pray for them, and disciples scolded these parents, so you're bothering Jesus, and Jesus said to them, let the children come to me. Let them come to me. Wasn't pushing them away. He said, let them come to the jail. He didn't say, let them come so I can abuse them or punish them or make them feel as if they're less than. No, he said, let them come to me. In other words, I recognize their dignity, their worth, their wholeness as children. Not necessarily, how some of us as board of children should be seen and not heard. I understand, because I was a parent too. I'm still a parent, but when my kids were young. But you have to give children respect too. Respect their minds, respect their creativity. It doesn't mean you don't help to guide them, that you don't help to, discipline, but you have to respect them too. Listen to your children, not just when they get to be adults, but listen to them. The kids are amazing, and if you pour yourself into them, if you love them, no, they don't always come out perfect. No, they don't. I don't care who you are. None are not perfect. No kids are perfect. But when you put your hands on them to teach them, to love them, and to care about them, to make sure they're in good schools that care about them, the teachers that are teaching them really are teaching them not just what the state says they should know, but what they should know, everything about the history of this country, about what you are about, maybe your faith and how that is and why you believe the way you believe. Don't be afraid, because kids, yes, they will challenge you. They will ask you questions. And sometimes you have to tell them, I don't know the answer. And so they said, so the disciples scolded him, and Jesus said, let the children come to me. Don't stop them. For the kingdom of heaven belongs to those who are like these children. Think about that. The kingdom of heaven belongs to those who are like these. They say they were like children, like these children. In other words, they are pliable. They are sort of have a sort of innocence about them. They are willing. Because they probably, their parents was bringing them, but they probably wanted to be there too. And then he says, and then verse 15, he says, and he placed his hands on their heads and he blessed them before he left. So when you're placing your hands on your kids, it's not necessarily for abuse. It's not for this lady Davenport to be putting them in. Matter of fact, she should never be locking up children. Never, ever should she be locking up. Matter of fact, they should take her job away. She shouldn't have a job. They shouldn't even have a position like that. The thing they should be working at is, if kids are acting out so poorly, the question is what have we been teaching them as adults? Why are they that way? And then when you can get down to the root of things, then you can start to correct it. But it doesn't help to blame the victim, to blame the children for things that we have not done. And as a nation, we ought to be ashamed of ourselves. But it's a part of our history. It's a part of our history. Don't you know, if you read about the Ivy League presidents, Ivy League, that's Harvard, the Yale, those schools, the Browns and stuff like that. If you read about the history of their presidents, they often had children slaves. That blew my mind. It's a book called Ebony and Ivy. Ivy, Ebony and Ivy. I forget the president wrote. I think she was the first African American president. She was a woman who she was president of Brown. But it's something maybe you should check into and read, Ebony and Ivy. It's a powerful piece because it talks about how these presidents of these Ivy League schools own children, and many of them were preachers, white male preachers. So this is the stuff we've got to deal with in our country. We got to work on it. We've got to be honest about it. We've got to just and ask ourselves the question, what's really, really going on? The Ebony and Ivy. It's a book you can get. It's by Craig Stephen Wilder. There's another book by that lady, but it just talks about these these issues and things that were going on. So let me finish up here tonight. So let y'all go. But the thing is, I want you to look at this text and understand that when Jesus blesses these children, that's what we have to do. And we often have to sort of call ourselves into order, adults, and we have to reflect on what is going on, what we're doing with our children. As I finish up here tonight, many of you know I'm a Howard. If you don't know, I'm a Howard University Divinity School graduate, so I'm an alumni of Howard University. But what's disturbing now that's going on is that the young people there are having to protest because of the living conditions that they're having to experience while being a student at Howard, plus a number of other issues that they're raising to the administration in terms of the high cost of the school in the midst of, all the things that they're being blessed with. Some couple gave the school $5 million the other day. And Howard ought to be ashamed of itself anyway, in the midst of the pandemic and all the, particularly Black folks experience, to even think about raising tuition. I know things are difficult. I know things are high, but there's got to be other ways. Here's the thing. We're talking about tonight, I'm talking about what's really going on. How in the world could we not support these students for protesting? How could we not pay attention? How even in our city, the mayor, I don't know if she's made any statements or done anything about it. Maybe she's not aware. I'm pretty sure she's aware. But this is the kind of thing. And then it also raises the issue of gentrification, because there are people who have moved around that school who act as if they were moving in a neighborhood that didn't have a college, a university. And I bet you they wouldn't go up to Georgetown or George Washington creating the same kind of situation. And so I want y'all to pray for these students and understand they are precious in God's sight. And we need to find a way to bless them. Pastor Hart and I think we're going to go up tomorrow. He's going to take his food truck and, thanks, Elder Jackie, take his food truck. And so I don't know where y'all will be tomorrow, but we got to support these students, man, in terms of, and this is what Howard was birthed, in a sense, out of the racist country we had in terms of education. All the HBCUs, there wouldn't be HBCUs, historically Black colleges, if Black people were allowed, if they were accepted in the beginning to many of these white institutions. And now the thing is, we've known that these schools really work. I think two of my sisters and my nieces graduated from HBCUs, and so we know the job that they do in terms of education. So I want you to pray for those students. Now, as we finish up tonight, I want to thank you all for joining us, and I hope you're getting some out of these lessons that I'm sharing with you. And I just want you to think. But if you have an opportunity, if you want to give to our church, even during the week, some contribution, you can certainly do that, and it really helps our church to do the things that we do. And we're just happy. The church, and we put it on Facebook. We were so happy to be able to, through your giving, give Miss Brenda Perry a nice laptop computer so she can use, and I think she may be using it tonight to be online. So we're just grateful that you with your tithes and offerings helped us to do that. And she does work in the community, her and Miss Edith, and so we want to just continue to support them and support each other and other things that are happening. So tonight, we pray that you would consider making a gift. They all take $5 or $10, whatever you want to give. We're just grateful for your support and any kind of support. Don't forget to continue to pray for me and pray for each other, and just be vigilant. And sometimes we got to get involved, whether it's through the PTA or whether it's the meetings, whether it's being informed about who is a new sort of persons who are coming to be voted for. Find a way to stay involved. And also, we know there's a lot of negative going on, but also find a way to find something positive and to celebrate and to enjoy life. Yeah. So I want to let y'all know I really appreciate all of you, your support. Thank you for the village. You are such a wonderful church. Thank you for all the friends of the village. And this is Dr. Tait, and we are signing off. So have a wonderful and blessed evening. God bless.